You get 30 seconds of zoning out. My name is Melissa. I'm the volunteer coordinator here. I also help with some of the public programs like this lecture series. So we do have usually at least 3 lectures a year, typically in the winter, kind of keep people involved and get outside a little bit, at least outside of your house. And if you want to brave the slightly icy trails, we do short trails. So I would encourage you to go for a walk after. So you are at the Great Bay National Estuary Research Reserve, and we're part of a national system. There's 30 reserves around the country, and every reserve is part of NOAA, and then also has a state partner. So our state partner is New Hampshire Fish and Game. So we get some of our funding and support from NOAA and some from Fish and Game. And then also we have a nonprofit friends group, the Great Bay Stewards, which if you live locally, you might have heard of them too. They give us a lot of support as well. And so this is our second lecture so far this year. So today we're going to have Jen Kennedy with Blue Ocean Society. She's going to talk about marine debris. She's been working with Blue Ocean Society for over 26 years as an educator, but also as part of their marine debris program, which started a while ago as part of an Adopt a Beach program and has grown a lot since then. So I think this will be a really interesting lecture. Feel free to ask questions. We are also recording this lecture to put on our YouTube channel for anyone who is not able to come here. And if you have any issues with the volume of the microphone or anything, just feel free to speak up about that as well. All right, thank you. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. Hello. Thanks so much for having me, Melissa, and thank you all for coming out today with all the icy sidewalks and roadways and everything that's going on out there. So I'm Jen Kennedy. I'm the executive director and co-founder of Blue Ocean Society for Marine Conservation. Has anybody heard of us before? Okay, good. A few. We do a number of things, which I'll share with you today, but I'm primarily here to talk about marine debris, plastics in our oceans. It will. I don't know what, oh, there we go. Okay. So as an organization, our mission is to protect marine life in the Gulf of Maine through research, education, and inspiring action. And we have a number of programs to do that. Has anybody been to Carey Cottage in Portsmouth? It's a beautiful place, isn't it? We're very happy to be there. We've just started our 4th year there. So for those that don't know, this is a historic building. It's on Creek Farm in Portsmouth, and it's a nonprofit hub now. So we're one of the nonprofits fortunate enough to be there. We don't have this whole building, but we have that little suite there in the corner. And so welcome you guys to come visit us down there at some point, or if you're walking the property, there's lovely trails around there as well. So that's where we are. Our major programs include marine debris work, also outreach to schools. We actually have a life-size inflatable whale that's about the 65 feet long. It's a life-size fin whale, which is one of our most common species out here in the Gulf of Maine. Also do whale watches and whale research, and we have the small facility called the Blue Ocean Discovery Center, which is down in Hampton Beach. And so really our 3 pillars are research, education, and inspiring action. So taking data that we're learning about whales and about marine debris that I'm going to be sharing with you today, using that information for education and kind of mixing it in with whatever current events are going on and inspiring people to hopefully take action to help protect the ocean. Because as you all probably know, a healthy ocean is important to the health of all of us. I just wanted to throw in a little bit about our whale research. We actually do have a talk, an online talk next month about our whale research and our results from last year. Last year was an astounding season for whales in the Gulf of Maine, and our research coordinator is going to be talking about that next month online. So if you want to join us for that virtual program. So we study individual whales like this humpback whale named Pinball here, who's one of our favorite humpback whales. We can actually tell these whales apart by their natural markings. And fin whales as well. So these are the 2nd largest species on the planet, and they're pretty common out in the Gulf of Maine. But what I'm really here to talk to you about is marine debris. So trash found in or by the sea is one of the most widespread problems facing the world's oceans and waterways. How does it affect marine life? Well, there's a question there because we don't really know. There's still a lot of work being done on what that pollution is doing to marine life and to humans as well. And it's also a symptom of a larger issue. So there's really just an issue of, we have issues with consumerism and kind of a lack of respect or knowledge about what we're doing to the planet, which ends up resulting in litter on the beaches and on our roadways. This picture right here, that's a SpongeBob SquarePants balloon that saw while we were out whale watching about 20 miles offshore. So there was some research done in 2015, like trying not to block the slides, but it's hard for me not to walk around. So, and it showed that 8 million tons of plastic entered the ocean every year. So lots of plastic, right? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about worldwide results, what people are finding on beaches, and then locally what we're finding on our local beaches through our beach cleanups. But how does this trash get out here? So things like blowing out of garbage cans, blowing off roadways. Sometimes people unfortunately just litter on the beach. This was, somebody had a party on Hampton Beach and just got up and walked away, left everything there. We do have fishing gear that shows up on the beach. Usually through no problem or no fault of the fishermen, but it just ends up washing there in storms, or it's been run over by boats or things like that. And then there's these things called microbeads. Have you guys heard of those? They've actually been banned in most products now, but that just points to there are some smaller things sometimes that aren't quite that visible to the naked eye that end up in our waterways. So there's not as much of a problem in the US with microbeads anymore. Basically, these were things like plastic pellets that were actually put in things like toothpaste and skin cleaner and stuff to help exfoliate your skin or polish your teeth, and it wasn't getting trapped by the water treatment system, so they were ending just out in the waterways. We do have a problem with microfibers and microplastics. Microfibers, like little fibers from our clothes and other products, and I'll be showing you some more pictures of that in just a moment. So root causes I already talked about a little bit. Kind of a consuming society. We like our convenience, especially, well, in the US and in other countries too. We're very busy, right? And so sometimes it's a lot easier to pack your kids' lunch with single-use potato chip bags as opposed to putting them in reusable containers. There's lack of facilities to process. So even if you could recycle, you guys might have seen the news a few years ago where it showed that 9% of whatever could be recycled was actually recycled. So some of the things you think you're recycling, they aren't really actually getting recycled. And then solutions don't always work. So there's a lot of really cool products out there, like this greenware, these compostable products that are supposed to be kind of the magic bullet and solve everything. So if you just use all these at your parties, then it's just going to magically go away. And in a lot of cases, these compostable products only compost in an industrial composting facility. So they have to be in areas of really high heat, and it's not going to break down in your home compost bin. So do still have a lot of work to do in some of these products. So how much plastic is there? It's difficult to quantify. It's everywhere, pretty much. All the way from the ocean surface down to the deepest parts of the ocean. It's another balloon. This is Elmo that was seen out on a whale watch. This is a picture, actually a small video. So we've been doing, this was work we had done working with the Rosalia Project, which is another nonprofit, and they actually have a sailing vessel and an underwater camera and underwater retrieval vehicle. And we were looking to do a survey of lost fishing gear and other trash that might be out of the Isles of Shoals. So this was in Gosport Harbor. As you can see, this was quite a while ago in 2013. Just show you what some of the stuff looks like underwater. And how overgrown and camouflaged it can be. So this thing coming up here is actually a rock, but we will see some fishing gear in a moment. Lots of vegetation on the bottom up there. And just coming into view here, see a lobster trap that's all overgrown with lots of ocean plants. Just kind of sitting there on the bottom, untethered, lost at some point. So there is trash that we even have here out in our local waters. Does anybody dive? There's dove around here. We talk to divers all the time and see all kinds of things on the ocean bottom. And what are the impacts? I promise, I'll get to some better news in just a moment. So we know that this litter affects everything from the tiniest creatures on Earth, like the zooplankton. This is a little creature called a copepod, which is about the size of a grain of rice. And the green right there is little plastic pieces inside its digestive tract. So there's a lot of work being done on animals are swallowing this stuff, but is it really affecting them? What are they absorbing from these plastics? A lot of plastics have all kinds of chemicals attached to them that do all kinds of different things. They make them more flexible, or they make them different colors, or make them last longer in the salt water. We don't really know how animals, including us, are absorbing these chemicals and other things. It's possible that this zooplankton is eating this plastic, but that is just going right through the other end and not really affecting it too much. So there's a lot of work being done on that. This was a Atlantic white-sided dolphin, one of our most common dolphin species in 2015. This is on York Harbor Beach. It washed up and died on the beach. And when scientists did a necropsy to figure out what killed it, it was actually a balloon that was trapped inside its digestive system. This was a northern gannet. This is one of my favorite seabirds, one of our largest seabirds. This one was flying around a whale watch that I was on several years ago, and I took pictures, and then I got home and was sad to discover that there was fishing line, and probably a lure here, hanging off somewhere near its foot, and then going to the wing. This is a happier picture. Anybody know what this is? It's a turtle, it's a sea turtle. Do you know what it's eating? What's that?
Lines or lobster lines.
It's actually eating a jellyfish, so it's a lion's mane jellyfish. But it does look like other trash, right? And so you might have heard in the news how sea turtles can eat trash, mistaking it for their food, and you can see how that could happen. We actually posted this picture on our Facebook page when we saw this. This was in 2020, and about how turtles can eat balloons, and it's really important to hold onto your balloons so they don't end up out in the ocean. And that got one of our most shared Facebook posts, which was exciting. But so out of the Isles of Shoals, where we've done some cleanups, we find a lot of balloons out there, and balloons are one of our top items that we see when we're out whale watching, as far as litter on the water. So there's impacts on us too. It's not just we from as an organization standpoint, conservation organization, care about the wildlife, but also there's a lot of impacts on people. So first of all, it costs a lot of money to clean up this trash. This is Hampton Beach during the summer. This is an overhead view. And all those lines are the tracks from the beach raker that rakes the beach to pick up all the trash every single day during the summer. So that costs a lot of money to clean up. And if people actually just threw out their own trash, we wouldn't have to spend all those thousands of dollars to do that. We do find a lot of fishing lures and sharp things on the beach, broken glass occasionally. So obviously that can injure people on the beach. Then there's all the bad news about microplastics that are in the news all the time lately. So this was in 22, found in human blood for the first time. And microplastics are plastics that are less than 5 millimeters, so like a grain of rice or smaller. This is about colleagues of ours, the Shaw Institute, and they're up in Blue Hill, Maine, and they are doing some really cool work on plastics. Cool work, but depressing also. One of the things they're doing is studying microplastics in human placentas and the effects of microplastics on pregnant mothers. And they're working with NYU and Harvard on some of those studies. This was in 2018. Very scary. They found microplastics in our beer. And this is just recently an article about our brain is full of microplastics and how are they harming us. So it's just a really crazy problem. And I've heard, talked to scientists that all they do is study microplastics, and they're like, well, we can't even really do anything about it. Not that they're like throwing up the towel, but they're like, we have to find ways to kind of adapt because they're so prevalent. Even anything, you know, actually, I have mostly natural clothing on today, but if you're wearing, you know, a fleece jacket or something like that, that's shedding off plastic microfibers pretty much all day long. Carpet, same thing, or upholstery. So it does have a really dramatic impact on our lives. Plastic is great for a lot of reasons. It's great used in medicine, and a lot of it is doing a good job from what it was designed to do, last a long time and help us out with a variety of things, but obviously it does have lots of downfalls too. So what are we doing to help and what can you guys do? So we do have a number of marine debris programs at Blue Ocean Society. We do beach cleanups. Has anybody been on one of our beach cleanups before? Awesome, thank you. Susan, did you raise your hand? And so we have an Adopt a Beach program. So not only do we do public beach cleanups that are, actually we have them on the first Saturday of every month in Hampton Beach. We have an Adopt a Beach program. So we have other groups that have decided to adopt their own beach and do a cleanup every month. And some of those are open to the public as well. We have a huge program doing private cleanups with groups. So companies that a lot of companies now around here are paid to volunteer, which is great. And or their scout troops or schools that want to do beach cleanups with us. So that's our interest in our beach cleanup programs has really grown over the last 20 years since we started that. We also coordinate the International Coastal Cleanup here in New Hampshire, which is part of the Worldwide International Coastal Cleanup, and some cleanups at the Isles of Shoals and underwater, which I'll be talking about in a moment. Pelagic litter, so litter that we see out on the water. There's another balloon. This one's Spider-Man. And so when we're out whale watching, studying whales and teaching people, we're also recording the litter we see out there. And then we can look at the types of litter we're seeing on the water and kind of compare it to what we're seeing on land. Hopefully use that information to do education and develop solutions. Also work with New Hampshire Sea Grant doing microplastics research. And we have a wonderful volunteer named Stephanie that organizes our fishing line recycling program. So we have these PVC fishing line recycling bins that she's put up at I think 15 to 18 different marinas along the coastline from southern Maine to Massachusetts. So if you have fishing line that you'd like to get rid of, you can go on our website and find a bin to put it in, or there's a number of tackle shops that'll accept it, and then it gets sent to a company that recycles it. So our goals basically ultimately are to protect marine life, but also to collect data and help understand the problem better, and then hopefully inspire action and behavior change in people. So every time we do a beach cleanup, we record what we find on data cards. So we have this paper data card that we use. There's also an app called Marine Debris Tracker. So if you're interested in using apps, this is a free app that you can download. It's called Marine Debris Tracker. And if you want to contribute to our local data, you can go on there and select the Blue Ocean Society's list and do the same recording that we do on one of our regular beach cleanups, and it gets submitted to us. So every time we do a beach cleanup, we're picking up everything we find and also recording that so we can get an idea of what is found on each beach. So last year, just finished our tabulation of our 2024 results, did almost 300 beach cleanups with the help of over 4,000 volunteers. So we're a really small organization. We only have 7 staff members, only 3 of which are full-time. So we really couldn't do it without the help of volunteers. So if you have joined us for a beach cleanup or volunteered with anything for us, or volunteer for anything here in the Seacoast, thank you, because we really couldn't do all this work without you. Picked up about 8,000 pounds of litter and over 160,000 pieces of litter. And we distinguish between the pounds and pieces just because pounds can vary quite a bit based on a number of factors. So if you go out on a beach and it rained for the last 3 days, you might find stuff that's really wet and heavy. For pieces, it's a lot more easy to quantify that and tell, the number. And I think that's a pretty impactful number, the number of pieces that we're picking up. So might be a little hard to read from in the back, but these are our top items. And really the takeaway here is we have cigarette butts, which you probably would guess is one of the top items we find on our local beaches. But the rest is all small plastic pretty much. So unknown plastic and other plastic less than 10 centimeters in size. That makes up the bulk of the other items that we find. This other right here, so we have a beach data card that has something like 40 items on it that we keep track of. Obviously, we can't list every single item we might find on the beach. So this other is things that don't have a specific category. So cigarette butts are well known to be a huge problem on beaches worldwide, but if you did total up all the little plastics that we find, all those little unknown bits, that's gonna far outweigh any of the cigarette butts that we see, unfortunately. And single-use plastics amounted to about 24,000 of the items that we picked up. So that means, 60 disposable water bottles, disposable forks, disposable cups. So 24,000 of the things that we picked up had a reusable alternative. So if people had chosen that reusable alternative, we would have been spending over 24,000 less times to pick things up. Just have some pictures here of some typical things we find on beach cleanup. So this one was a lot of foam. Found a lot of nips in some areas, all kinds of things. And toys. If you do beach cleanups with us a lot and you have kids or grandkids, you will never have to buy sand toys because we have army guys. Silk flowers. Fishing hooks and line. Sometimes old stuff. I remember pull tabs. This is an old Lysol bottle. This we found on a beach. We were doing a cleanup with a group in Provincetown, Massachusetts a few years ago. We found all these old bottles on this one cleanup, which was really cool. And this, you guys remember these phones? This was a few years ago at Pierce Island in Portsmouth. Nice old Motorola. So here's some good news. This is our beach cleanup data from 2004 to 24, so the last 20 years. We actually started our cleanup programs in 2001. There's a big dip here in 2020. That's because we did hardly any cleanups that year because of the pandemic and the beach closures and all that. So this just shows some of our common items that we see out there. So, oops. So we have rope up here in light blue, cans in green, plastic bottles in navy blue, and straws in this orangey color. So they are all going down. So this is the average number of items per cleanup. So kind of trying to average it out so it doesn't make as much of a difference how many cleanups we did in a given year. So things are going down. We are noticing less trash on our beaches due to this kind of regular maintenance. Cigarette butts is going down as well. Bet all of us probably know fewer smokers than we did 20 years ago, which is good news. So this shows the number of volunteers and the total pounds of trash. So pounds of trash went up a little bit in the last few years, and that's really more because we've done so many cleanups. We've had huge interest since COVID. Everybody wanted to go outside and volunteer and make a difference, and we've just gotten a lot of requests for cleanups, which has been great. So overall, over the last 20 years, the amount of trash pounds that we're collecting is going down, but the volunteer interest is continually going up. So there are a lot of people that do want to make a difference with this problem. This is a very busy picture. So this just shows last year when we were out whale watching, we used this program to record the litter we see and the whales that we see. So any of the black triangles you see out there, that's litter we saw when we were out whale watching. I forget how many whale watches we did last year, over 100. And this is on one whale watch boat. And then all the colored triangles, stars, all that, those are all whales that we saw. So, and everything, this is Rye, New Hampshire. So that's where we leave from whale watching. This is Jeffrey's Ledge, where we do a lot of our whale watching, although most of the whales have been closer to shore lately. The Alza shoals are right around here somewhere. So kind of goes in this big line just because we go in these pretty regular tracks back and forth to the same whale watching areas every day. But so it does show you not really hard to tell that whales and litter are in the same place out there in the ocean. Balloons again, just to give you a comparison. So onshore last year, we saw 388 balloons, but it was only 0.2% of the litter that we found. Offshore, balloons were 23% of the litter that we saw. So obviously we're gonna have things offshore that we see are floating things. So balloons, wrappers, plastic bags, so things that float and are easily seen by our, when we're doing data collection out on the boat. But balloons are always those top items. So they definitely blow offshore though. That's where we tend to see them. So I want to talk just a little bit about how this compares worldwide. These are really tiny numbers, but this is the International Coastal Cleanup, and this is really our best look at trash worldwide. It's run by the Ocean Conservancy every year. There's usually over 90 countries that participate. Last year, well, 2023, there was almost 500,000 volunteers. So these are people that go out in New Hampshire, other states and in different countries and go out and do beach cleanups, usually in September, and then report the results to the Ocean Conservancy. So then they can look at overall trends in marine pollution. This cleanup's been going on since 1985, so it gives us a really good picture of how things have changed over time. The Ocean Conservancy also does a lot of good work with making change, like working with Coca-Cola, for example, to make bottles that have more recycled plastic or whatever. So they're trying to use this data for good things. So last year, or 2023, over 7 million pounds of litter were picked up. They covered 16,000 miles of coastline and over 14 million items were collected. Here's some top items worldwide. It's pretty similar to ours. Actually, when you look at all the different continents they reported on, the US has cigarette butts as #1, but not every continent is like that, which is kind of interesting. But your typical single-use disposable things, cans, bottles, wrappers. Has anybody seen these before? These Hooks-It discs? So we are still finding these. So these were accidentally discharged almost 14 years ago in March. In the town of Hooks-It, their wastewater treatment plant was using these little white filter discs to basically filter wastewater. And there was an accidental spill and about 4 million were released and they went out into local waterways, and a lot of them went down the Merrimack River and out in Newburyport into local beaches. This is what they look like. We've been trying to gather reports of these discs where they were found in different areas, and this one was a few years ago in Norway. They've also been found in England on a lot of Cornish beaches. I've heard anecdotally they've been seen in the Azores, Gulf of Mexico, and Texas. So they have traveled all around the world. They're going on this little journey. So it does really show, we actually have built a lesson plan around this and a lending kit for teachers, which shows how the trash travels. We've done a lot of work with Portsmouth middle school students, and they do a unit every year on tides and currents, and they make this part of it to show how the tides and currents can impact even trash and help, and the students actually come up with solutions to plastic pollution. And we found, I think, 174 of them last year. In Hampton Beach on one day, we had a big group do a cleanup and they picked up 18 in one day. We tend to see them more if it's a full moon or really high tide. They seem to get flushed out of different areas where they've been hiding for the last 14 years or whatever.
Good question.
Yeah.
Has anybody told us how many have been found? Did you know how many have been found?
I don't think anybody has. The question was if anybody's totaled how many have been found. I know the first year, within 6 months of the spill happening, they had hired a company to clean them up, and they estimated they cleaned up the first 4 million, but there was still 300,000 left somewhere. I'm sure in our database, we could tell you how many we've found, thousands since then, but yeah.
Thanks for that.
So the Isles of Shoals, I just wanted to talk a little bit about. We had done some cleanups out at the Isles of Shoals about 10 years ago, and we're just getting back into that work again, thanks to a federal grant that we have gotten. This shows you some of the things we've seen out there at the islands. So we were really curious to go out to the Isles of Shoals. They're 5 miles offshore. The islands, there's Shoals Marine Lab and the Star Island Conference Center out there, and they're really good at trash management and recycling and composting. And we're like, what's gonna be on these islands when they have really good trash facilities and good infrastructure out here? Well, we find all kinds of things. As you can see here in this picture, this was on Appledore Island about 10 years ago. This was one of my most unusual trash items. This is on Smutty Nose Island, and anybody wanna guess what that is?
Porta potty.
It is, it's side of a porta potty, and it smelled really bad. That one we actually left there for hygiene and safety purposes, and it was actually really heavy, so, we're not sure really where it came from. I'll show you another interesting find on Smutty Nose in just a moment. So we've been working with, this project, NOAA funded project to work with other partners around the Gulf of Maine in addressing derelict fishing gear that's out on islands and shorelines. And so last year, this was a picture from a cleanup we did on White Island, which is where the lighthouse is out at the Azle Shoals. We got out there and at this island, it's really challenging because all there is this landing ramp here. There's not a dock for a boat. So we partnered with a local fisherman and he moored his boat further offshore, and then we used an inflatable boat to go back and forth. So anything we picked up had to be loaded back onto the inflatable and then hoisted back up onto the lobster boat. And so we had this big ball of lobster trap and rope, and there was a fishing line in there as well. That was probably about 3 or 4 feet tall. And we ended up having to cut that apart just to get it into small enough packages so we could load it back up. There's our local fisherman Lucas that was helping us out. This is Liz Craig from Shoals Marine Lab. She works on the Turn project out there, helping with the bird studies. This was a bunch of, well, old walkway that had washed up in a storm that we helped them get off of the island last year, just because we had the capacity to do it. And this, anybody know what this is? This was on Sweaty Nose Island as well. So this is really funny. I was working with my colleague out there on this cleanup, and we were just kind of like sauntering along looking for stuff in the rocks, and she like went past this boulder and all of a sudden like screamed and jumped. She thought this was like a giant seal or something that was there, and we kind of crept around and found out it was a bead bag. So we ended up getting that off, but you know what these are stuffed with, right? Those little styrofoam balls, and like we're like, if we didn't get that off and it got pounded up in a storm, all those styrofoam balls would be everywhere. And actually the guy, the smutty nose steward that was out there taking care of the island at the time, he's like, oh yeah, that's the second bean bag chair that we found this year. He's like, I don't know if people are using them on their boats to hang out on or what, but so kind of scary. This was about 10 years ago. We're hoping to do some underwater retrieval work with our friends at Fish and Game and New Hampshire Marine Patrol. And getting back to some underwater cleanup work. So this will just kind of show you a little bit of that. Like I said, this is a video from about 10 years ago. And we're hoping to work with partners to do some more of this year. So we picked up some traps that were underwater that didn't have a buoy attached to them anymore. They actually, most of them belong to the same lobsterman. Tried to figure out what was inside them and release whatever we could, and then brought the traps back to shore. And we're hopefully going to be doing some of that work this spring. And then we also do some work with microplastics, so studying those tiny plastics on our beaches. If you're interested in microplastics, we have ways you can volunteer with this study. So we sift samples of sand and try to see what types of plastics we find. Really trying to get an idea of if there are foams or fragments and where they might be coming from and how we can stop these microplastics from getting on the beach in the first place. So if you can see all these little white pieces here, these are all little styrofoam like pellets basically. We're not really sure where they're coming from, but we know that they make up about almost half of the microplastics that we find on our local beaches. So it's not just little plastic pieces. We started this study about 10 years ago, and I was like, oh, we're probably just gonna go out there and find little pieces of Dunkin' Donuts coffee cups and maybe some plastic bottle pieces, but turns out there's all these styrofoam balls and also other styrofoam pieces that might be either from packaging or dock floats or maybe construction foam. So we're working with partners up at the Shaw Institute in Maine. So in addition to the work they're doing on placentas, they're also analyzing some of our foam pieces to see. They have some machines that can tell a little bit more about where they might be coming from, how long they've been in salt water. We're trying to get some more data on that and try to see if there's any way we can figure out where they might be coming from, or if there is like a couple sources and what the solution might be, if it's education or legislation on foam coolers or whatever it is. And I've mentioned microfibers earlier. If you're not familiar with microfibers, I just want to give you an idea of what they look like. So this is a piece of fleece that I happen to have at home. And we have this really cool lab that we do with students, and also a lending kit if you know any teachers that would want one. And so basically students simulate what happens to fabrics in the wash. And so they take this piece of fleece or another fabric, they put it in a jar with some water, they shake up the jar pretending they're like a washing machine, and then they filter the water through a filter. kind of like a coffee filter. So this is what this fleece looks like magnified. I just use a magnifying app on my phone. So you can see all the little fibers there. And so then I put it in this jar of water, shook it up for about 30 minutes or 30 seconds and filtered it through. And can you see all those little fibers that are in there? So all these little dark things, these are all fibers that just came off of 30 seconds of agitation in my homemade little hand washer. So imagine if this stuff is getting agitated in your washer at home for an hour, or however long it takes to do your wash, all the little fibers that can come out. And unfortunately, our systems don't work to trap them very well, so they can end up out in local waterways. So again, we're not really sure what the impact of those is on fish and other wildlife that are out there. So I do believe with all this bad news, individual actions do add up and every little bit does help. So, you know, things like not buying so many granola bars wrapped in plastic or packing your lunch in reusable containers. I mean, using a reusable water bottle as opposed to a plastic bottle. There's only so much we can all do sometimes, and it does depend on the manufacturer in a lot of cases, but I do think those little things do make a difference as well. So even if all of us could just find a reusable replacement for just one thing in our household, it would eventually add up. There has been some progress. Let's ignore all the news of the last month or so, but there has been some good news over the last few years. This was a Google alert I got, I don't know, not too long ago, and plastic is in the news all the time. Oceans are in the news all the time. Oceans are on the Discovery Channel all the time, so there's a lot more consciousness, I think. There's also a lot of fake information out there in a lot of cases, and kind of glitzy information you see on TV, but it's good to get people inspired and enthusiastic about the ocean and the problem it faces. So Maine was working on some legislation regarding packaging. Portsmouth did have a styrofoam ban, but that was right around COVID, and I think that actually hasn't gone into effect all the way yet, but they were talking about it. There's a plastic bag ban in New York State. I grew up in New York State, and it's really great for me when I go home now and everybody's carrying their reusable bags when they weren't, you know, when I was growing up there. Maine bans plastic bags and polystyrene foam. They've also been working on extended producer responsibility. So that's basically taking the responsibility of disposing of packaging back to the manufacturer. So saying, you want to send me a TV that's covered with styrofoam and in a plastic box? Well, then I should be able to send it back to you and you have to figure out a way to dispose of it rather than me, the taxpayer, figuring out how to dispose of it. Maine also worked on banning mass balloon releases until I think it was 2021. You can still do this in New Hampshire. You can walk outside right now and launch 1 million balloons up into the sky, and it's totally legal to do that. So Maine actually had a group propose a ban on that, and it included fishermen that were seeing balloons out in the water all the time and picking them up and so sick of running across them. And we actually used some of our data to help be in favor for this ban because we were collecting all this data showing balloons were so prevalent out of the water. So this year we're working on expanding our Adopt a Beach program. We just created this microplastic sampling and sorting toolkit. So if you're interested in the issue of microplastics, you might want to sample your local beach or area, let us know. And we have a toolkit that can help you get started. We are recruiting leaders for our beach cleanups. Sorry, I had to change some plugs around and hopefully I won't lose you here, but we're recruiting leaders to help with our beach cleanups. We're doing gear cleanups that I talked about, our foam analysis. We're also working on an upgrade of our Discovery Center down in Hampton Beach. And